Why is everyone tired all the time? Seriously, think about it. You wake up tired, you go to work tired, you go home tired. And it's not just you, it's everyone around you. Your work colleagues, your friends, your family. Everyone's complaining about the same thing, power outage. But here's the scariest part. This is not normal. Our grandparents didn't live like this. They worked hard, physical labor, manual labor. And yet, they had the energy to get home and live. For conversation, for playing with the children, for dating. So what has changed? The amount of stimuli. Just think about it. You wake up and immediately grab your cell phone, 20 notifications, 50 emails, 100 WhatsApp messages. Even before brushing your teeth, your brain has already processed more information than our grandparents processed in an entire week. Then you'll go to work. Zoom meeting, Slack pinging, email arriving, cell phone vibrating. You don't do one task at a time. You do 10 tasks at the same time, and the brain? The brain is screaming, "Stop, I can't take it anymore." But you don't stop, because stopping is wasting time. To stop is to be unproductive. So you keep going, and going, and going, until you can't take it anymore. And here comes the cruelest part. You're going to the doctor. Get blood tests, thyroid, vitamins, and everything is normal. The doctor looks at you and says, "You're healthy, it's just stress, try to rest." But how do you rest when your brain won't switch off? How can you relax when, even while lying on the couch, you're scrolling through Instagram? How can you rest when even your rest is more stimulation? The truth is, you no longer know how to rest, and the worst part is, you don't even realize that's the problem. But there's something interesting here. While the Western world is heading towards an energy collapse, while burnout becomes an epidemic, while everyone else is taking medication to calm down, or caffeine in massive doses, there is a place in the world where it was different. Japan. And it's not because the Japanese work less. On the contrary, they even have a word for death from overwork, karoshi. But they also have something that the West has lost. Ancient practices of energy restoration, concepts that samurai have used for centuries, and modern neuroscience has just proven that. I know that Japan isn't a perfect country, and many people, even those who are Japanese, can't apply the concepts I'm going to present here, but those who can apply them possess much more energy than most people. These are 3 simple concepts, 3 practices that, if you apply them, can completely transform your relationship with energy. The first is called Seijaku. It is the art of active stillness. It's not meditation. It's not sleeping. It's something much deeper. It's giving your brain what it needs most and never received, a true silence. And science proves it. 10 minutes of Seijaku per day activates the default mode network, the brain's cleaning mode, reducing mental fatigue. The second is Shinrin-yoku. Literal translation, forest bathing. It is the Japanese practice of spending deliberate time in nature. It's not about hiking or exercising in the mountains. It's simply to be there. Japanese studies show that spending 2 hours in a forest reduces cortisol, improves the immune system, and restores attention depleted by excessive screen time. It's literally the cure for stimulus overload. And the third is inamuri, the art of strategic napping. Short naps of 10 to 20 minutes restore energy without falling into deep sleep, and modern science proves it. Power naps increase alertness by 100%, improve memory and creativity. It's the reset your brain needs in the middle of the day. 3 concepts, 3 ancestral practices, which the Japanese warriors dominated, and they can save you from modern burnout. But before I teach you exactly how to apply this to your life, let me tell you the story of a guy who was exactly where you might be right now. His name is Caleb, 35 years old, married, successful, and completely empty. He had everything, but he had no energy for anything. I didn't have the energy to work properly. I didn't have the energy to train. He didn't have the energy to date his own wife. And the worst part, he didn't even know that his problem had a solution until the day he sat in front of a Japanese doctor. That taught him exactly what you are about to learn, and that completely changed his life. But before I tell you that story, if you also feel like you're living on autopilot, someone who has no energy for anything, someone who is always tired even without making any effort. Subscribe to the channel and like this video, because what you're about to discover in the next few minutes may change your perspective on tiredness and rest. I also want to take this moment to wish a happy new year to all of you who are part of this channel's history. Let's make 2026 one of the best years of our lives. Now come with me because the story begins here. Chapter 1. The Life of Caleb. Caleb woke up every day with the same feeling, that heavy feeling. You know when you sleep 8 hours and it still feels like you only slept 2? That was it. Every day. He opened his eyes. He picked up his cell phone. And he began. Instagram, emails, messages. Before even getting out of bed, he had already processed 50 notifications, and his brain was already exhausted. But he didn't even realize it, because that was normal. Caleb was a systems analyst. He spent his days in front of the computer, and he had a routine considered healthy. I slept well, I ate relatively well, I even tried to work out. But the training, it was torture. He had to drag all the way to the gym. And when I got there, each series seemed like an impossible mountain. It wasn't a lack of strength. It was a lack of willpower, a lack of mental energy, like he could do it. But it was as if I were carrying 50 kilos of invisible weight on my back all the time. And what about work? By 10 a.m. he was already mentally exhausted. But that didn't make sense, right? He had just started his day. And that's how the cycle began. Coffee, more coffee. Red Bull at 3 p.m., more coffee at 5 p.m. He kept working, but not alive. It's just working. Like a robot, on autopilot. But what hurt him the most wasn't the work, not even training. It was in Clarice, his wife, the love of his life. They had been together for 8 years. And I've been trying to have a child for 2 years. But how can you have a child when you barely have the energy to connect with your wife? Days passed, sometimes weeks, and nothing. It wasn't for lack of attraction. Clarice was beautiful. He loved her deeply. But when he got home, she was there smiling, preparing dinner, trying to strike up a conversation. And him, he would answer with monosyllables. Yes. We'll see later. And I'd go straight to the sofa, cell phone in hand, scrolling, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. None of that was interesting, but he kept scrolling, because it was the only thing that didn't require anything but effort. And Clarice? She realized it. She watched her husband drifting away, fading away. She was trying to broach the subject delicately. Honey, have you been sleeping well? Maybe you should take a few days off. We could take a trip, get some fresh air. But Caleb always had an excuse. That's not it, love. It's just work. This week has been hectic, but it will pass. It will get better soon. But it didn't get any better, and they both knew it. Chapter 2. The Difficult Conversation. Until one night, Clarice sat down next to him on the sofa. She took the cell phone from his hand, and she said something he would never forget. Caleb, I can't stand seeing you like this anymore. He tried to look away. Like what? Like this, empty. You're not here. You're always tired. You don't have the energy for me, for us, for anything. Silence. She continued. Honey, we want to have a child. But do you really think we're ready? You can barely take care of yourself. And that hurt. Because it was true. He knew he didn't have the energy to be a father. He could barely be a husband. Clarice took his hand. I need you to seek help. Not necessarily therapy, but something. Go to a doctor. Get some tests done. Anything. And for the first time in months, Caleb agreed. Chapter 3. For consultation. 2 weeks later, Caleb was sitting in a waiting room. Medical clinic. Clean. Minimalist. He had made an appointment with a doctor Clarice had found online. Dr. Yuki, specialist in integrative medicine. The name was already different. The approach, then. When he entered the office, the first thing he saw was Dr. Yuki, a Japanese woman. Gray hair tied back, impeccable posture. She wasn't behind a desk piled high with papers. She was sitting in a comfortable chair, with a cup of tea in her hands. And she smiled when she saw Caleb. "Sit down, Caleb. Would you like some tea?" He accepted, somewhat awkwardly. They talked for about 10 minutes, nothing about symptoms. Just talk about life, work, routine. And then Yuki asked, "Caleb, when was the last time you felt truly rested?" He thought, and he thought, and he realized that he didn't remember. "It's been years." Yuki nodded, as if he had expected that response. "And you've already had some tests done, right? Blood tests, thyroid, vitamins?" "Yes, everything's normal." "So let me ask you another question. When was the last time you did absolutely nothing?" Caleb frowned. "Without doing anything? Like, what do you mean? No cell phone, no TV, no music, nothing, just you and the silence?" He laughed awkwardly. "Never?" "Exactly. And that's where the problem lies." Chapter 4. The Revelation. Yuki stood up. She went to a bookshelf and picked up an old book. "Caleb, have you ever heard of the samurai?" "Yeah, like Japanese warriors, right?" "That's right. But they weren't just warriors. They were masters of energy." She opened the book to a marked page. The samurai always needed to be ready to fight, to make decisions, to lead. But they weren't constantly exhausted. Do you know why? Caleb shook his head. "Because they understood something that the modern world has forgotten." She sat down again and looked into his eyes. "Energy is not forced. Energy is cultivated." And they had 3 fundamental practices for that. 3 concepts that kept them strong, alert, alive. And that's something modern science has only now begun to understand. Caleb was paying attention now. Yuki continued. "The first concept is called Seijaku, active stillness. The second one is Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. And the third is Inamuri, the art of strategic napping." She smiled. "And I'm going to teach you all 3. Because you, Caleb, don't need medication. You need to relearn how your brain works." Chapter 5. The 3 concepts. "Let's start with Seijaku," said Yuki. "Do you know what the biggest energy thief in your life is?" Caleb thought. "Work." "No, it's mental noise." She explained. "Caleb, your brain works like a computer. It has RAM, processing capacity. And every time you get a notification, every time you think about 5 things at the same time, every time you're scrolling on your phone, you're running 1,000 programs at the same time. And do you know what happens when you do that? Your brain overheats and it freezes." Yuki continued. "Seijaku is the opposite of that. It is the practice of active stillness. It's not about sleeping. It's not necessarily about meditating. It's about being present, silently, alert, but effortlessly. The samurai did this before battles. They would sit in silence and just observe. They observed the breathing, the sounds around them, the sensations in the body. And do you know what happened? Their brains entered a state called default mode network. It's when the brain stops processing external information and starts organizing itself internally. It's literally the brain's cleaning mode." Caleb was fascinated. "And does science prove this?" "Absolutely. Studies show that 10 minutes of Seijaku a day reduces mental fatigue, because you're giving your brain what it needs most: rest, active." Yuki handed him a piece of paper. "Your first task, every day, right after waking up, you will sit for 10 minutes. No cell phone, no music, nothing. Only you and the silence. It may seem difficult at first, it will seem like you're wasting time, but trust the process." Caleb took the paper and nodded. "Now for the second concept," said Yuki. "Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. Have you ever noticed that when you spend time in nature, you feel different?" Caleb thought. "Like lighter." "Exactly. And it's not psychological, it's physiological." She picked up another book. She showed charts and studies. In Japan in the 1980s, the government created a national Shinrin-yoku program because they realized that people were getting sick, burnout, depression, chronic fatigue. And then they started studying. What happens when you put someone in a forest for 2 hours? And the results were surprising. She showed the numbers. Cortisol, the stress hormone, drops 12 to 16%. Blood pressure decreases. The immune system improves. Caleb's eyes widened. Just from staying in the forest. Just being in the forest. And you don't need to hike. You don't need to run. You don't need to exercise. Just be there. Absorb the sounds, the smells, the textures. Because nature has something the city doesn't. A natural rhythm. His brain evolved over millions of years in contact with nature. It recognizes that environment as safe. And when he feels safe, he relaxes and he recovers. Yuki looked at him. Caleb, you live in a big city, but do you have parks near you? Yes, I have. So your second task is simple. Twice a week, you will spend 1 hour in a park. No cell phone, no headphones, just walking, observing. And if you can go to a place with more trees, even better. Caleb wrote everything down. And now the third concept, said Yuki, inemuri. You're going to love this one. It's the art of strategic napping. Caleb laughed. A nap? Like taking a snooze? Exactly, but not just any nap. A nap, strategic. Yuki explained, in Japan it's common to see people napping in public, on the subway, at work. And this is not seen as laziness, it is seen as a sign of dedication. Because the Japanese understand something simple. Energy is not infinite, and it needs to be replenished throughout the day. The samurai did this too. They had a technique called vigilant sleep. Short naps, 10 to 20 minutes, which restored energy without falling into deep sleep. And modern science proves it. Naps of 10 to 20 minutes increase alertness. They improve memory, creativity, and problem solving. But it has to be short, because if you go over 20 minutes, you fall into a deep sleep, and then you wake up feeling worse than before. Yuki looked at the clock. Your third task. Every day after lunch, between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m., you take 15 minutes, and you nap. Set an alarm, sit in a comfortable chair, close your eyes and let it happen. You don't need to sleep deeply, just rest. Caleb was amazed. 3 simple concepts, practical, real. And does this really work, Dr. Yuki? She smiled. Caleb, I wouldn't ask you to do it if it didn't work. Try it for 30 days and tell me the result. Chapter 6, The Process. First week, the resistance. Caleb left the doctor's office with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Could 3 things this simple really change anything? But he promised Clarice and himself. So the next day, he began. Day 1, Seijaku. Caleb woke up, 6:30 in the morning. Instead of picking up the cell phone, he sat on the edge of the bed, and he tried to remain silent for 10 minutes. The first 30 seconds were okay. Then, his mind started racing. Did that email arrive? I need to respond to the customer. What time is the meeting again? He opened his eyes. He looked at his cell phone. He almost got it, but she took a deep breath and closed her eyes again, and so ended the longest 10 minutes of his life. But he finished. Day 3, Shinrin-yoku. On Saturday, Caleb went to the park near his house, alone, without a cell phone, left it in the car, and he started walking. At first, he felt strange. What am I doing here? Just walking around? Doing nothing? But then, he stopped thinking. And he began to realize the wind in the trees, the sound of birds, the smell of damp grass. He sat on a bench and stayed there, just observing. And for the first time in years, he sensed something different. It wasn't happiness, it wasn't euphoria, it was calm, a profound calm, as if something inside him had slowed down. He stayed there for 1 hour, and when he got back to the car, he realized that he hadn't thought about work even once. Day 5, Inemuri, Monday, 2 p.m. after lunch. Caleb closed the door to his home office. He set a 15-minute alarm. He sat in the reclining chair, and he tried to take a nap. At first, he couldn't sleep. He stood there, eyes closed, mind racing, but then he started to relax. Breathing slowed down. The body sank into the chair, and when the alarm clock rang, he opened his eyes, and he felt something surprising. He was renewed, not completely rested, but better. It was as if something had been reset there. And how was his afternoon? It went by smoothly, without that 3 p.m. fatigue, without the energy crash. Second week, subtle change. In the second week, something began to change. Caleb continued with the 3 concepts every day, Seijaku in the morning, Shinrin-yoku twice a week, Inamuri every day, and he began to notice small differences. First, he was no longer grabbing his cell phone as soon as he woke up. That anxiety of "I need to check everything" had lessened. Second, he was sleeping better. Not that he slept more hours, but his sleep was deeper. He was waking up less often during the night. Third, his mind was clearer. He was able to focus better on his work, to make decisions faster, and most importantly, he started to have energy for other things. Energy to talk to Clarice when he got home. Energy to cook dinner together. Energy to touch it. And on a Thursday night after weeks, and they connected again in truth. Week 3, the insight. In the third week, Caleb had a revelation. He was in the park, doing Shinrin-yoku, and suddenly he understood everything. He wasn't tired from lack of sleep. He wasn't tired because of a lack of vitamins. He was tired because he lived in constant resistance. Resistance against silence, Seijaku. Resistance against nature, Shinrin-yoku. Resistance against rest, Inamuri. He spent the whole day fighting against one's own brain, forcing focus, forcing productivity, forcing energy, and that exhausted him. But now what? Now he was doing the opposite. He was working with his brain. Giving the brain what it needed: silence, nature, rest. And the brain in return was giving it to him: energy, focus, clarity. It was simple, obvious, and at the same time, revolutionary. And that's where the scientific aspect comes in, validating all of this, because it's not just Japanese philosophy, it's neuroscience. Dr. Andrew Huberman, Stanford neuroscientist, explains, when you expose your brain to periods of inactivity, you activate the default mode network. This is when the brain consolidates memories, processes emotions, and literally cleanses itself of metabolic toxins. That's exactly what Seijaku does. The Dr. Ching Li, a Japanese immunologist and pioneer in Shinrin-yoku studies, discovered trees release compounds called phytoncides. When you inhale these compounds, your NK cells, cells that fight viruses and cancer, increase significantly. The effect lasts up to 30 days. In other words, Shinrin-yoku is not just relaxing, it's medicinal. Dr. Sarah Mednick, a sleep specialist at UC Irvine, proved it. Naps of 10 to 20 minutes are the most effective for restoring alertness and cognitive performance. They don't lead to deep sleep, so you wake up refreshed, not groggy. That's exactly what Inamuri does. So yes, it works, and science proves it. But there's something even more interesting here. Something that Dr. Yuki explained to Caleb at his last appointment, and that completely changes the way you understand energy. She said, "Caleb, do you know why the samurai were so efficient in battle? It wasn't because they were stronger or faster. It was because they didn't waste energy. While other warriors fought with tension, with anger, with fear, the samurai fought in Seijaku, active stillness. They used only the necessary energy, nothing more, nothing less. And that's what you need to learn in your life. It's not about having more energy. It's about stopping waste, the energy you already have." And that blew Caleb's mind, because he realized he didn't need Red Bull. He didn't need any more coffee. He just needed to stop leaking energy, mental energy, with unnecessary worries, with multitasking, with screens. Physical energy, with constant muscle tension, with poor posture, with poor sleep. Emotional energy, wasted by pointless arguments, by comparisons, by social media. And when he started to keep energy, he had more than enough energy for everything that mattered. Chapter 7. 4 months later. 4 months have passed. Caleb was sitting on the couch. Clarice was beside him, and she was holding something in her hands. A pregnancy test. Positive. They looked at each other, and they began to cry of happiness, because now they were ready. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. Caleb was no longer exhausted. He had energy. Energy to be a husband, energy to be a father, energy for life. And it all started with 3 simple concepts. Seijaku, a stillness that restores. Shinrin-yoku, nature that heals. Inemuri, rest that energizes. 3 ancient practices that have the power to change everything in your life. So answer me this. Are you living like Caleb used to live? Always tired, always on autopilot, always lacking energy? Now answer me something else. Are you ready for a change? Because the truth is simple. You don't need more energy. You just need to stop wasting what you already have. And what 3 concepts did you learn today? They are the way. It starts tomorrow. 10 minutes of Seijaku upon waking. 1 hour in the park twice a week. It could be a light walk, but without neglecting to contemplate the nature around you. 15 minutes from Inemuri after lunch. Do this for 30 days and tell me the result, because life is too short to live tired. And if this video helped you in any way, if you felt that this message came at the right time, leave a comment below, because I post videos like this every week. Profound concepts, ancient philosophies, modern science, everything to help you live better. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this, because maybe you know someone like Caleb, someone who is living on autopilot, and this could be the message that changes that person's life. Thanks for watching until the end. And remember, energy cannot be forced. Energy, it is cultivated. See you in the next video.